Global supply chains are the arteries of modern commerce, intricate networks that connect raw materials, production hubs, logistics systems, and end consumers across continents. Yet, these networks thrive only in an environment of relative geopolitical stability. When political friction escalates between nations, trade routes tighten, policies shift overnight, and entire project ecosystems can collapse under uncertainty. For project managers operating on a global scale, geopolitical tensions have evolved from being occasional disruptions to persistent, high-impact risks. From the US-China trade rivalry to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and from Middle East instability to economic sanctions in Africa or Latin America, these forces shape not only how goods move but how projects are conceived, financed, and executed. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for safeguarding timelines, budgets, and stakeholder confidence in global supply chain projects. The nature of geopolitical tensions encompass the competition, conflict, and negotiation between states or regions for political, economic, and strategic advantage. Unlike localized risks, geopolitical tensions are systemic. They ripple across industries and time zones, creating uncertainty that challenges traditional project assumptions. Common sources include trade wars and protectionism. Competing tariffs and barriers reshape trade flows. Economic sanctions. Governments restrict interactions with certain entities or nations. Armed conflicts. Military actions disrupt infrastructure and logistics corridors. Diplomatic breakdowns. Withdrawal from trade agreements or alliances impacts commerce. Nationalization of resources. Governments may seize control of foreign assets. Cyber warfare and espionage. Attacks on data and logistics infrastructure weaken operational continuity. Each of these scenarios introduces uncertainty into global supply chain projects, threatening operational resilience and economic predictability. The ripple effect on supply chain projects. Procurement and sourcing risks. When tensions escalate, procurement becomes a minefield. Critical materials like semiconductors, rare earth elements, and energy supplies can become scarce or politically restricted. Example: during US-China trade conflicts, semiconductor supply chains suffered severe disruptions, forcing global manufacturers to rethink sourcing strategies. Project managers face dilemmas: whether to seek costlier but stable suppliers, or risk dependencies on politically sensitive regions. B. Disruptions to logistics and transportation. Geopolitical issues often disrupt major shipping routes or air corridors. Border closures or increased customs inspections delay deliveries. Naval conflicts or sanctions on maritime zones reroute cargo ships, increasing travel time and cost. Ports in conflict zones may become inaccessible, forcing companies to redesign entire logistics networks. For instance, the 2022 to 2024 Russia-Ukraine conflict restricted access to the Black Sea, a crucial grain and energy export corridor, impacting projects dependent on those commodities. Circa inflationary pressures and cost overruns. When tariffs or sanctions hit, the cost of raw materials, transport, and insurance rises. Project budgets, often fixed at contract signing, quickly become unrealistic. Insurance premiums for goods transiting through volatile regions increase, while currency fluctuations triggered by political instability affect financial planning. Project managers must frequently renegotiate supplier contracts and adjust financial models to reflect changing global realities. D. Supply chain fragmentation. As tensions rise, nations and corporations tend to regionalize production, a phenomenon known as deglobalization. Projects once optimized for efficiency now pivot toward resilience and sovereignty. Companies diversify suppliers, build redundancies, and create friend-shoring partnerships with politically aligned nations. This approach increases stability but introduces complexity, multiple compliance regimes, and longer ramp-up phases for global projects. E. Human capital and regulatory challenges. Visa restrictions, labor mobility barriers, and cross-border sanctions disrupt workforce availability. Skilled project professionals may not be able to travel or collaborate across borders, leading to slower execution and communication breakdowns. Regulatory landscapes also shift rapidly, requiring compliance teams to monitor export controls, import licensing, and evolving sanctions lists. Strategic responses in project management. Integrated risk management. Modern project managers must integrate geopolitical risk assessment directly into project planning frameworks. Tools like the political risk matrix, Monte Carlo simulations, and sensitivity analyses are used to quantify the impact of uncertainty on project outcomes. Incorporating geopolitical risk into the risk register allows for proactive mitigation rather than reactive crisis handling. B. Supply chain resilience engineering. Rather than optimizing purely for cost or speed, organizations now design supply chains for flexibility and resilience. Strategies include supplier diversification, engaging secondary and tertiary suppliers across different regions. Dual sourcing, splitting procurement between multiple suppliers to reduce dependency. Inventory buffers, maintaining safety stock in critical categories. Nearshoring, relocating production closer to primary markets to minimize geopolitical exposure. Circa agile and adaptive project methodologies. In volatile environments, linear project plans can fail. Agile principles, iteration, continuous learning, and adaptive planning allow supply chain projects to pivot quickly. For example, when a component becomes unavailable due to sanctions, agile teams can rescope, identify alternates, and rebaseline the project with minimal disruption. D. Digitalization and predictive analytics. Technologies like AI-driven supply chain visibility platforms and blockchain traceability systems enable real-time tracking of geopolitical disruptions. Predictive analytics can forecast probable delays or risks based on evolving political indicators, empowering project leaders to take preventive action. E. Financial and contractual safeguards. To mitigate volatility, contracts should include force majeure clauses specific to geopolitical risk. Project financing models must consider hedging instruments for currency and commodity price swings. Insurance policies should cover political risk, expropriation, and trade restrictions. Case studies and real-world lessons. The U.S.-China trade war, 2018 to 2020, global manufacturers faced tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods. Project managers had to redesign production strategies, shift assembly to Vietnam, Mexico, or India, and renegotiate contracts under uncertainty. Lesson: over-reliance on one manufacturing hub can cripple global operations when geopolitical dynamics shift. Brexit, 2016 to 2020. The United Kingdom's withdrawal from the EU introduced customs complexities and regulatory divergence. Supply chain projects in automotive and pharmaceuticals faced multi-month delays and escalating compliance costs. Lesson: political realignment between trade blocs can redefine logistical and legal frameworks overnight. Russia-Ukraine conflict, 2022 present. Energy projects across Europe faced severe fuel shortages and cost inflation as gas supplies from Russia plummeted. Agricultural and manufacturing projects were forced to diversify energy sources rapidly. Lesson: energy dependencies create strategic vulnerabilities for project continuity. The long-term evolution of global supply chain projects. A. The shift from efficiency to resilience. The classical model of global supply chain design, centered on just-in-time (JIT) production, is giving way to just-in-case (JIC) approaches that emphasize flexibility, redundancy, and national resilience. B. Rise of regional trade blocs. Geopolitical fragmentation encourages regional agreements such as RCEP, Asia-Pacific, CPTPP, and the EU's internal solidarity mechanisms. Project managers must now navigate multiple overlapping regulatory ecosystems instead of one global trade framework. Circa strategic autonomy and technological sovereignty. Nations are investing in local semiconductor plants, renewable energy independence, and domestic manufacturing. Global supply chain projects increasingly involve state intervention, subsidies, and public-private partnerships aimed at reducing foreign dependency. D. Data, cybersecurity, and information control. As data becomes a geopolitical asset, cross-border data flow restrictions, e.g., GDPR, China's data security law, complicate digital supply chain operations. Project managers must integrate data sovereignty into project scope and risk management. The role of project managers in a geopolitically volatile world. The modern project manager is no longer just an executor of plans but a strategic navigator in complex geopolitical terrain. Key competencies include geopolitical literacy, understanding trade policies, sanctions, and regional politics. Scenario thinking. Building flexible pathways for multiple futures. Stakeholder diplomacy. Managing cross-border partnerships with sensitivity and foresight. Crisis leadership. Maintaining composure and communication in times of disruption. Project managers who can anticipate and adapt to geopolitical turbulence become invaluable strategic assets to their organizations. To conclude, geopolitical tensions are not anomalies, they are the new normal. The global supply chain has become a political battlefield as much as an economic one. For project managers, this means developing multidimensional awareness that extends beyond cost and schedule control to include policy, security, and diplomacy. Future supply chain projects will succeed not because they are the fastest or cheapest, but because they are resilient, diversified, and geopolitically aware. The project manager of tomorrow must think like a strategist, act like a diplomat, and lead like a systems engineer, balancing political volatility with operational precision.